Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today is episode 35. We've got a special guest today, Kyle Dudley, and he's actually a therapist in training as well as a recovering addict. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well. So let's kind of dive into it. Let's talk about first what you've been through personally with your story of addiction and recovery. So I guess let's start when you were young. Is there anything like a certain age maybe that you started?
Well, I was against, just to let you know, I was against all type of drugs and alcohol being used, period, as a kid. This was based on how I grew up. I lived in and around the Philadelphia area, but when I was a kid, I lived in Philly and grew up as under a single parent household. Knew my dad and up until I was 6 years old, and at that time when that happened, the family kind of went through a flux and understanding what the new dynamic was going to be. In the place I live at, there was a change in the neighborhood. A lot more people was coming in, and drugs started to become really big then. And I decided as a kid I didn't want to use. I knew that. Nor use alcohol.
How old were you when you first made that decision?
I made that decision maybe when I was 8 years old.
So you were really young.
I was really young. Yeah.
That's a big decision for a young kid. Like that's very hard to. You must have been mature for your age, is what I'm saying.
That and the fact that I had two uncles that was in Vietnam. Both of them had substance abuse issues.
Did they start while they were in Vietnam? Is that where?
Yeah, they were in Vietnam. Yeah. And then a part of my family had their alcohol issue, and I didn't want that to affect me. So I made a decision when I was younger. I didn't want that.
So you got to see firsthand what it did to people.
Yeah, I did. Moving from 8 years old up until about 14. So for a little while I didn't. My older brother, who's 2 years older than me, he got caught up in some of the drugs, the marijuana specifically. Didn't drink too much. That came later. Well, he kind of like encouraged me to use, a lack of a better way of saying it, one day, because he didn't want me to tell him that he was actually using.
So if he had a partner in a crime, you wouldn't get in trouble.
Well, it made my head hurt, made my stomach hurt, and it reinforced the fact that I didn't want to use it ever again. Okay. Now fast track that until I went into college. My first year in college was a very depressing year. I am an avid student. Of course, I'm an honor roll student. That's how I became a doctoral, a pre-doctoral candidate.
Nice.
I am a therapist. I'm a master level therapist with a trauma certification. Right now, I do drug and alcohol treatment as my main focus. Although it's not my only focus, it's my main focus. I was to be an MD. I was going to become a doctor, a regular, normal cardiologist is what I was looking for.
Okay.
So when I went to college, and my first year turned out to be a very depressing year, a lot of different issues came up. It was during that time that I found that alcohol was able to kind of calm me down, which I didn't want to drink. But my mother told me if I had a couple of drinks, it wouldn't be a bad thing for me, So
what was, did you ever identify what was getting you depressed?
Yeah. I can get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
About the mental health. So when I came home for the holiday break, my first time ever drinking alcohol happened then. I was between 18 and 19 years old. And I started my career drinking alcohol. Now that alcoholic career started with me feeling stress and then having to calm down after all this year of depression I just had. It made me feel okay. It made me feel loved, needed, and accepted. It really did. I didn't use it for that, but it made me feel that. So I still had the mindset not to be addicted. I just now have this new friend named alcohol. Whenever I get stressed, whenever I feel like things are coming to hold me back, so to speak, I can always go and just relax myself with alcohol and just, and go that way. So that's how it all started with alcohol with me. It didn't progress fast. It didn't. I went through, it became strong in my academics after that. Oh, I was failing my first year, by the way.
Okay. So that's probably part of it.
Yeah, so these things are I didn't adapt well to the community, to the actual college scene so much, but I turned it around after that. I won a scholarship that next year into the ROTC. I became I went to a fraternity that next year. I was wrestling the year prior to that, so I stopped that, which I thought was a mistake. I should have kept wrestling, but so all these nice things were happening, and I'm still drinking, but I wasn't drinking alcoholically. I was drinking more to relax and be social. But I attributed that because I made the decision not to drink when I was a kid, not to use alcohol. I mean, not to use drugs when I was a kid, as my beginning of addiction. Okay. Fast track a little bit further. I lost my scholarship in the military because of alcohol and some of the things I was doing. Okay. Directly linked to alcohol, because the day that I lost my scholarship, I was not supposed to be at the bar on base. I was drinking, but I wasn't drunk. Alcohol was there, and I got a counseling, and that counseling led me to lose my scholarship. Now, from that point on, a lot of my mental health started to come out. Anger, rage, frustration, those type of things, which are normal type of moods when you feel lost. However, I took it to a point where the only thing that could calm me down was to drink.
That's the only thing. You didn't have no one to, I guess, talk to except the bottle?
No, I didn't. No one could really understand exactly how I was feeling, because I really didn't know what I was feeling. I know I just felt really angry. I lost jobs because of that anger, by the way, that same year. Okay, when I was trying to revamp my life after losing my scholarship. Fast track it a little bit further. I'm starting to use cocaine now. Okay. I got married out of all this, transfer schools out of all this, not really getting settled because the alcohol and the drugs started taking over. And that's when I knew I was addicted. When I started using the alcohol and drugs for specific problems and specific issues, and I knew it. I could tell you right now, every time I used alcohol as a kid and drugs as a kid, the beginning of my addiction was tied to some type of traumatic event that was happening. One of them was abortion of my first child. Okay.
Wow. And we were just speaking before about Gabor Mate, where he believes a lot of addiction stems just from trauma. And I mentioned him in my last podcast as well, because me getting to interview a lot of people like yourself, hearing their stories, I'd say like 95% of people had some type of trauma, and not like little stuff, like pretty serious stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You find that a lot in your profession, a lot of trauma from.
That's one of the reasons why I'm a trauma therapist, by the way. It's because my profession kind of pushed me that way, and the client need pushed me that way.
Yeah.
So, got married 3 times out of my addiction. My current marriage is the one that lasts. I'm still married now, happily and sober.
That's good.
It took me a long while to actually get to a point of having years of sobriety. I've had times when I've had 5 years, times when I had 2 years. Over the past, I say I was 20 years, I'm 55 now. So over the past 30 years or so, I was just struggling to stay sober. I've had more time clean than I've had using, but the times of my use was so intense and so destructive that it would damage a lot of my relationships. I couldn't hold a job because I couldn't be committed to a job because of my alcohol and drug use.
So were you using all day? Like for me, I was lucky where I didn't use during the day for the most part, except like pot. And then when I got home, I was
a heavy binger. Binger. So I would go for 3 or 4 months, right? And I could stay sober on my own, right? But something would happen. An argument with my first wife was a good one. And I'm out in the street again, using drugs and using alcohol. And alcohol was
any type of stress, that was your crutch, right?
Any type of stress that happened, I would go out and use alcohol, because see, alcohol was my way of actually calming myself down. Okay. At one point, it did get to be every day. When I got hurt, when I was married to my first wife, I got hurt in a car accident, and my job was paying me to just heal. So at that time, I started using alcohol every day, and I was using cocaine every day. I would stop, do it again, stop and do it again. So basically, I wasn't a daily user, but more of an episodic user connected to stress. Can I say it that way?
That sounds correct. So it was just based on what was going on, that moment in life, that frame, and then the second it wasn't what you wanted, you were right to the bottle or cocaine, it sounds like.
Basically, yeah.
Maybe you could say that, because a lot of people don't realize when there are a lot of disagreements is they just want to get their own way. You know what I mean? When you don't get your way, all of a sudden you're upset. You know, that episode of anger and depression then turns into you leading to yourself to drinking or drugging.
Yeah, I think a part of that could be looked at in that way. I really could, because a part of addiction recovery is understanding that self-will has his way of doing its own thing. We call it in AANA, the self-will run riot, right? But it's not simply as that. As I found out as I started treating people, it's not just simply self-will. Self-will would say that I have a power to actually control it. But after I became addicted and I started a new pattern of life, without me understanding how to break that pattern, there would be no way for me to stop it. So once the pattern is now ingrained in me, and I'm gonna get more into this later, once the pattern is now ingrained in me, that is my go-to coping skill, okay? That's how I deal, that's how I function. That's how I actually move. That's how my life is created. It's created around dealing with stress and dealing with it in a specific way. So when the stress comes up, it makes sense. I go use. If it's not around, I don't use. It's kind of went like that. And I started realizing a lot of people actually had the same type of responses to stress and or mental health issues. So.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot myself when, once again, I speak to people through these interviews, very similar stories, you know, especially the using it as a crutch. You know, I think I could agree with you where I did the same thing to myself. It was always, oh, fight with the girlfriend, let's drink. A good day, let's drink. Yeah, it was okay day, let's drink. So it was always based on my mood, but no matter what, it was always, let's go to the bottom.
Yeah.
It was always, let's go to the one. And then especially when it was something I didn't like. And I thought, you know, I want my way, my way, my way, my way. And I didn't get my way. And then I was like, well, I could just drink now. Yeah, there were times I feel like I was looking forward to being depressed a little bit so I could have a reason to drink. As crazy as that sounds, but that's why we use the word insanity a lot in NA and AA, is because a lot of the things that go through our minds are pretty insane.
Now that right there, what you're saying does have a scientific base. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, it does. When you think it, and I'm going back to the patterns, behavioral patterns.
Okay.
Like I see that in your background, you have a lot of stuff, and that things in the background has purpose. Each and every last one of the things in your background has purpose. Well, you would not know the purpose unless someone taught you the purpose of those things in the background. When you know the purpose of what you're doing, when you're able to do it, you consistently do the same thing over and over again with the same thing or different variations of that purpose. Okay. So that's how the mind works. The mind is built to create these type of what we call memories, right? That we don't have to think about too much. Like if I ask you to cook an egg or make your favorite food, you know how to do it without even a thought.
Yeah.
Well, the addiction kind of works the same way. With the insanity of an addiction is like this. You know you're about to hurt yourself. You know it's not good for you, but you do it anyway.
Yep.
You have built your mind up or your mind has built up to say, this is an acceptable way for me to deal with this. Whether I like it or not, I'm going to do it. Okay. I've had people tell me that at times they did not want to use and they continue to use just because they felt like it. I'm gonna give you an example where I'm coming from. This one guy, he is got to be 65 years old now. And I knew him about 2 years ago. And he was a heroin addict. But before that, he did everything else that we talked about, cocaine, alcohol, that kind of thing. And then he got to heroin. Well, he would get times where he was 2 or 3 years sober in between his times of using. All his life, basically. He went to treatment plan after treatment program after treatment program and different type of plans. And I asked him, I said, so why are you here now in front of me at 63 years old? He said, because I thought it came on my mind to use. I went out and used. I was like, let's explore that for a little bit. I thought it came in my mind to use. I went out and used. There was nothing else attached to it. There was no stress attached to it. There was no anything attached to it. I had a thought to use and I went to use. I was like, huh, that's interesting. So if that is the case, then that I need to pay attention to. if a person had that in their background and their behavior, the thought of using becomes my way of using, I have to attribute that in my therapy, and I did that. I actually had to start working with people about that alone. The insanity of the use and everything is great. I get it. But for some people, that just doesn't work. That kind of mindset doesn't work. You have to get it a little differently. And we'll get more into the different types of way of treatment as we go along in our interview, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interested in stuff that you got to say about all this, because I think what you have a good way of doing is breaking it down to make it a little bit more simple for people like me who don't, have the master's or going towards the doctorate and stuff like that. Being a candidate, we don't have that information. Working with people, there is one question I know we wanted to explore a little bit. So when you do talk to these people, do you ever find that you get any type of confrontation or pushback where it's kind of like, who are you to try and help me? You know what I mean? Some people get that. Who does this guy think he's going to fix me? If anyone knows me, it's me. And we make excuses we end up being confrontational. At
times.
And then a lot of us, I'm sure, so you tell me as far as what you've seen with that.
I've seen a lot of people that throughout the years build up these walls, these barriers. Okay. And as we build up these walls and barriers that come into programming, like most of the people that come into a program that I work at, most of them at the very bottom barrel. I work with people that have no money, families are all over the place. Most of them are connected to the prison system in some way or another, or legal system. They have POs and that kind of thing. So I work with those type of people. Okay, they're the people that come off the streets and into programming. Okay, some of the people that I work with do have means. Okay, but the vast majority of people I work with are people that really are at the very bottom of the barrel. They're scraping everything and they need to build up. Okay, so you'll get people that come in with these walls up. And when you tell them that you really want to help them, they'll test it. Okay, they'll say, well, I want to work, and these are the things I really want to do. And they don't agree with it, right? They'll agree with you. And then when you keep them accountable, now here's the pushback. Okay, here's wait a minute, hold up. I said I would do it, but I'm like, well, you haven't done it yet. And now here's the argument coming up. And I think the reason for a lot of that is because when a person that needs help is asking for help, they don't understand how the help is going to come. And I think that because they have a different point of view of how the help should come, then they're not able to connect to it, how it's actually coming. Accountability, which is a part of the AA program, a part of the NA program, is something we do in therapy. We have to keep a person accountable for what they say. If we don't, the mindset of the person or the actual behavioral pattern of the person will say, I can say whatever I want to say to get you to believe me, and I don't have to do anything. That's not going to help a person to stay sober, though. It may help you get through a program, but it's not going to help you get sober for the rest of your life. It's not going to happen. If you cannot even believe what you say out of your own mouth, like your ears hear what you say, and if you don't perform what you say or agree, how are you going to be able to convince yourself you're going to stay sober? That's a good point, huh?
It's you need to have some type of self-control.
Yeah. So when me as a therapist, if I'm asking you, what do you believe will help you in your sobriety? And you tell me, well, talking to people in meetings, getting phone numbers, I'm going to go to my therapist on the outside. I'm going to see, Bob, Joe, Bill, they're going to be my supporters. Okay, fine. The next week, if I ask you, how many of those supporters did you actually talk to? Oh, I didn't get a chance around to talking to them. I'm like, well, did you stay sober this week? No. Okay, so you see anything wrong with that whole scenario? That's how I kind of do. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the connection.
Yeah, that's how I come out. And then that's when the pushback comes up. Okay, because what you're doing is, as a therapist, what we're doing is actually showing them possibilities of some type of dysfunction in how they're thinking about what they say and what they do. Okay, now this is called ambivalence. All right, when a person's ambivalent, they want to do it, but there's something stopping them from getting it done. Okay, and these are all internal type of motivations. How
so trying there's something like you want to quit, but there's something that is it something you can't identify that you're not aware of?
Okay, more likely
something that you don't even know what it is. It's
exactly
just holding you back.
More unidentifiable. Some people that say that I know what's stopping me. I'm just not performing it. What they'll say is like, I know what to do. Is me doing it that's the problem. Well, you doing it is not really the problem. The problem is, can you accept that you need to do it? See, now this goes back into acceptance, which connects to the self-help programs.
Yep.
But acceptance is so important in clinical work as well. Okay. Another thing is being willing, right? I'm gonna bring all the self-help stuff that you know.
Yeah.
Willingness to actually do the work, which means, are you doing your relapse prevention program? Are you talking to Sally Joe and whoever else you support? Are you being faithful to seeing your PO when you're supposed to? Are you trying to get a job, or are you just trying to, well, what are you doing? And if I'm keeping you accountable, it's because of what you're saying. That's what you want to do. I'm just keeping you accountable for what you say. That gives pushback. But eventually, when a person starts to understand that you're not changing as a therapist, there's no ground to change. They start to see that if there's no ground to change with him, there must be something going on. And then the peers around them say, yep, he did the same thing with me. This is where my life is going. I came in one way, I'm going out a different way.
Just showing them the results like this,
Yeah.
this kind of just saying nicely, this could be you if you just work a little harder.
And that's another connection to the self-help programming, because in the self-help program, the whole group does that by saying, we are people that were able to stay sober. You may not understand how to stay sober. So maybe if you follow us, maybe you can. Well, it works on the same muscle, so to speak, in the mind.
And that's the key word there also, is it may work for you. There's no guarantees in life.
Exactly.
But one of the things, so you mentioned a few times just now, people staying up to date with their parole officer and making sure they make their appointments. So that click means something as far as talking about the legal system. A lot of people, like this guy, Russell Brand, he's a famous actor. He's a British comedian, and he's also a huge activist.
Yes.
He was saying that we need to turn this into a medical issue, not a legal issue, that these people are sick. Because if we come to the conclusion that substance use disorder is absolutely true, there is a disease aspect to this. Why are we arresting people for it? It's like saying this person has diabetes, let's arrest them for, they are sick people and they need help. What do you feel about that? Because now my other thing I'm going to throw in there is, I don't know if you know this, Oregon, they have decriminalized all drugs. They actually followed a model from Portugal. I think Portugal started this 10 years ago, where they decriminalized all drugs. You get caught with heroin, as long as it's for personal use, you don't get arrested. And guess what? The rate of addiction has not gone up. It's actually gone down slightly. One of the big things is the rate of death has gone down dramatically, because there's those places where you can do a needle exchange and even use there, while they have people on staff to Narcan you in case you OD. So the drug use has gone down. Deaths have gone down, and the rate of disease has also gone down. So the rate of hepatitis C and HIV from people using the clean needles. I heard a story of a guy who had no water because he was poor. So he used puddle water on the street, and that's what he shot into his own.
That's common. Yeah, it's common.
Yeah, I mean, once again, going back to that word insanity. So giving these people, treating them like human beings, gave them, a lot of these people, more motivation to try and get better. And at least they come to these safe zones where they can use the drugs without someone actually overlooking it. So they don't want to die. Nobody wants to die. And they know that there's something forcing them to use this drug that can kill them. That's a sick person in my mind. The debate is still technically out on that one.
Yeah, it is, because
What do you feel about the legal issue instead of a medical issue, or those two combined?
I feel the two of them can work together, because one of the things that and this is something that and this goes a little deeper. I'll go deeper into the mind and the substrates, and I haven't talked about norms yet, because I'm building up to talking about behavioral norms and social norms. Okay. But when you talk about the legal system, right, the legal system is built on helping society stay in connect with one another without hurting one another. That's how I perceive it. Okay. Now, how it's performed is different, but the way the laws are stated, the way the laws are supposed to be connecting, is for us to work together as a society to not hurt one another. Okay. Now, if I go from that perspective, then if I get caught up in hurting somebody else because of my addiction, the actual legal system should be there to bring me back from that and say, listen, that's not the correct behavior. So let's stop the behavior, but also give you the resources so that way you can get your life together. So you don't need to do that behavior any longer, especially if it's connected to drugs. So, and therefore the two of them can work together, right, to solve the problem. What's happening in Pennsylvania is that the drug courts and everything that they had at one point was focused on getting people in jail. What they're doing is they may put them in jail for a moment, okay, maybe a week or two, until they get them to have been assessed by a therapist like myself, get a placement into a drug and alcohol treatment program, get them a PO to supervise their activities on the streets, okay? So therefore, they don't have to be in jail, but they actually get the treatment they need. They pay for the treatment, okay? They set them up with what they call case managers or CRS certified.
So when you say they pay for the treatment, it's paid for the clients. The clients aren't paying, the state.
No, the clients are not paying for it
Okay.
unless they have means. I mean, if they have means, it's different. But if they don't, the state of Pennsylvania will pay for it through
That's
the counties.
It's a good thing.
Through the counties, and sometimes even the actual POs or the legal boards in the county, they set aside money for drug and alcohol treatment. So that way they come into treatment like my facility where I work at, and they have the opportunity to actually get better. Okay. So I think the two of them can actually work together. Let me talk a little bit about the safe space you're talking about.
Yeah.
Safe injection sites,
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
It's a model that they have up in, I think, Toronto, and
Yep, exactly.
yeah, and I know that the city of Philadelphia was trying to do that in Philly because of Kensington area. I'm not sure if you know about the Kensington area.
No, not familiar.
It's the largest open air drug market on the East Coast.
Open air drug market?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Open air, okay, where people actually get drugs and use around the streets.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you're talking about, the guy that uses a puddle water, happens a lot down there in Philly, to be honest. Okay. So they were trying to bring out a safe injection site for the same reason. But the legalities of this is so muddled because there's so many different factors that factors into how having this site will actually work and everything else. Where the therapist is going to be at, the needle exchanges are already happening. That's already happening. But that safe injection site is having a little bit of pushback, and especially in the community because it's been so ravaged by the actual open air market.
That's one of the things that I also hear a lot. It's hard to find a place to actually put these establishments because so many people, they don't want it in their neighborhood.
Right. Well, in this one, they already had the drug addicts in the neighborhood, on the streets, in tents, just like if you've seen over in OC, over in California, right on the bay.
Skid Row.
Yeah, Skid Row, they have it open. I mean, if you could go on YouTube one day and look up Kensington, Philadelphia, you will see where I'm coming from. Okay. People have actually taken videos, going down there, do work down there, and you will see how open the market is. Okay. Personally, as a therapist, I'm for everybody getting the treatment they need and deserve. Personally, as a person in recovery, not so, because I've seen people actually stop using based on no drugs whatsoever. So I have a very, very point of view. As a professional, everybody give it to them, right? As much as possible. As personally, I wouldn't do it for myself, actually go into a safe space and go ahead and use. But that's me personally.
And that's good.
I keep it to them separate.
That's good that you don't keep your personal opinion into the business part of it, because a lot of people do that, and you can't go with your heart always. Sometimes you need to go with your mind and what's logical and what makes sense. And if you're telling me people are like getting better a little bit and they're not dying as much and they're not spreading the diseases, I believe a little bit. I believe in harm reduction. I'm kind of like you. There's certain aspects I believe in, certain aspects I don't. But at the end of the day, I know we have to look out what's for the greater good, not just my opinion.
No, that's a good point of view, because I look at it that way. MAT treatment, medically assisted treatment.
Yep.
Okay. At one point, being hardened with AA and NA, I was like, I don't know about this, because methadone already has its own problems. Okay. And I know people come off of methadone and have some of the worst detoxes I've ever seen.
I've heard that.
off of methadone. And I'm wondering, okay, so would the medication actually work? Well, over the years working with people in my facility was probably one of the first ones that actually used MAT, if not in program, adjunct to the program where a person is leaving the program with the actual scripts. Okay. But now we have it in program where a person can come up in the beginning of program and actually have the medically assisted treatment while they're still in program. Okay. So I was against it personally at one point, but as I started to look at the science of it, if I started to look at what people really needed and what the cost benefit of the whole thing would be, giving them MAT or the possibility of them relapsing and having dying, especially with fentanyl, I was like, you know what? I gotta go with the better mind in this. Let's go with the MAT if they need it. I'm not going to judge them if they need it or not. You know what I mean? So I had to put all the way out my own bias and let that be where it's going to be at. So what I tell my clients, I say, if you want the MAT, I promote it as much as I do anything else. I have no judgment about it past that. If you need it, go for it. I support you. I'll do the paperwork, not a problem. You know, but personally, I'm like, well, I know people, I've helped people get sober without MAT and see some phenomenal results. So I know both sides of the coin. So
yeah, as long as you see that there's always two sides to the coin. Because one time, this is one thing that someone kind of hit me. We have one of our admins for the group, and she said to me, dead people don't recover. So she's like, you have to continually give you have to give them as much time as possible. And like you said, if you need it, you need it. Go ahead. God bless. Obviously, I can't do the paperwork for them. You can.
Right.
And hopefully, if they truly want to quit, they'll eventually want to wean themselves off that one day.
And I found that out to be true too, which is another part of that part of the reasoning. I found that people that I've treated personally started with MAT and said, it's not for me. It's just too much. It feels like I'm gonna stop. I'm like, okay. And I found people that say, I need it right now. I said, okay. I've also found people that misused it too. Okay.
Yes.
And these are, but as you continue to work with the community, work with understanding how this MAT is supposed to work, you'll get a more experience in it. And that way you'll know which one is which, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. So we know how you feel about that side. So what do you think about decriminalizing? I mean, as far as a person doesn't get arrested, do you think they should get arrested?
I'm for it. I'm for decriminalizing drugs. The reason why I'm for it, because to me, and I'm going to be honest, I'm African American. When it got really strong and putting people in jail because of drugs, it was a lot of us. Okay,
yep, absolutely,
it was a lot of us, and a disproportionate amount of African Americans went to jail back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s because of crack cocaine. Well, crack cocaine came in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. So, and they thought that was the best way of doing it with no treatment. There was no treatment back then. You were just going to jail. Okay. The actual treatment modality is only about 10 years that I understand right now. Legal and treatment together is only about 10 years old, whereas actually sending people to a treatment program instead of sending them to jail for 6-7 months. So I'd rather see people that are actually hurting to get the help they need. I'm also for the PO because the PO gives them structure. A lot of addicts don't have structure. So
that's one of the things.
I know. I know. Which is one of the push. You asked me about the pushback, and that's the reason why I wanted you to bring that up. A lot of pushback is because the therapists and those that support in the clinical aspect of treatment is keeping people accountable and giving them structure. A lot of people don't have structure that's coming to programming, so they push back on it. They argue about it. They want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And we know that in society, that's not a good way to work.
Yeah, we have no discipline. And one of the things is part of Addicts Anonymous, we have the 4 pillars where it is self-love, discipline, right there, hard work, and then community. Those are the 4 things we believe that will help you. It's a good foundation to start.
Yeah, definitely.
And discipline is huge. I mentioned discipline because I specifically speak about structure and the book that I'm writing for us. And like you said, we just lack it. Some of us, because a lot of us have been homeless. A lot of us have not had a job in, 5-10 years. And just even getting up, and structure could be just getting up every day and showering, brushing your teeth, doing the self-care that you need, and the self-love you need to practice. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with that.
I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit here.
All right, I'm listening.
Let's look at the other side of this. Remember, I'm a behavioralist. I work with cognitive behavioral therapy is one of my modalities, and relapse prevention.
CBT.
Okay? CBT and relapse prevention, right? CBT says that what a person thinks often promotes their behaviors. Okay, so when I say structure, I'm talking about positive structure. There is something that's called negative structure. Okay. Now, it depends on how you look at negative structure, but I'm going to use it to frame the drug and alcohol behavioral pattern. Okay. There is a pattern of behavior that comes with being addicted. The thing is, it's not a pattern of behavior that's going to be positive for me. So when I say a person don't have structure, what I'm saying is that a person has structure to maintain their positive focus and build their life. They do have structure, it's just not positive. I kind of test this on a regular basis with my guys, right? I ask them about when I treat mostly men.
Okay.
Let you know, right? So I ask them, what was your day like when you're out in the street? First thing in the morning, I go get my stuff. If I don't have money, I go out there and hustle it up so I can get my first shot, so I can get well. That's what people that use heroin.
I've heard that term before, because people don't realize what that means is they're dope sick without it or whatever they're.
Exactly. They get well. All right. The next thing, if a person is an alcoholic, is the same thing. To stop the shakes, you know what I mean? It's the wheeziness in the stomach, to get that off for them. And for those people that use methamphetamines or cocaine as their primary, is just to get the day started, to start to cope. Okay. Once that is done, then the rest of their day flow out. And it looks like it's kind of chaotic, but they're looking for opportunities to make money so they can buy drugs. Talk to people to get money to buy drugs. Get with this person, find out what kind of drugs they got, and use. There is a pattern, okay?
Yep.
So if there's a pattern to it, there's a structure. It may not look like a structure, but it is one. In their mind, this is what they do day in and day out. They go to work through their stealing and through their, people they go out and sell metal and that kind of stuff. They do this on a regular basis so they can use the drugs they can so they can survive. So there's a pattern, but the pattern is not something that's going to be positively adapted to a positive lifestyle. So when we keep a structure, we're telling you, hey, forget that old structure, come into this structure. That old structure is going to lead you to death. This new structure, one day at a time, one moment at a time, 1 minute at a time, can lead you to life. So we ask you to drop the old and take on your new. Kind of see that?
Powerful, some powerful stuff. So have you ever relapsed when you first got sober? So exactly how long have you been in recovery now? How many
I've
years?
been in recovery over 11 years now. Well, it'll be 11 years in August.
Okay. 11 years. It's a long time. So did it work the first time around, or?
No, you can. No, look.
Hell no.
Okay, so you're looking for a pattern of behavior to change. Okay.
Yeah.
If your mindset is so focused on one side of life, how would you know anything about the other? Someone have to lead you too. If you're honorary and don't have humility, you think you know it all, it's hard for you to get the answers. And that was me.
Because you're not searching for answers if you think you know everything.
Well, I thought look, my mother studied psychology when I was a kid. So I've been associated with universities since I was 6 years old, 8 years old, okay? I had this mindset that I can do whatever I want to do because it's built in by my parentage. They told me, go after the goal. I mean, when I was a kid, my teacher says, you go after whatever goal you have in life. You can do it. They gave you that kind of mantra, the pride of life. Being African-American back in the 70s, pride for being who you are and getting your education, that was something to hold close to the heart. So I was made that way. So when I became addicted, it was like, how can I let this stop me too? It's just a new thing I have to overcome. But I realized it wasn't going to work that way after many, many relapses. Okay. Of me really trying to stay sober. It wasn't working. I had to, throughout life, little by little, address every last one of the things and reasons why I used every last one of them. Not all the time. It didn't happen every time. I didn't relapse all the time. I had 2 years sober, 5 years sober at one point, but I had to actually address every issue that was causing me problems. One of them was my mental health. I wasn't diagnosed with a mental health disorder until I got into the military over back in 2009. But I felt that I could have had a mental health disorder long before that. I was diagnosed in the military though. So yeah. And as I started to treat the mental health disease, that's when I got long-term recovery.
What were your symptoms that people noticed that led you into seeking help?
My mother first told me, because she looked at my pattern of using, how I was so episodic in it. Every time that I would get money, sometimes I would use, sometimes I would have money, I wouldn't use. I mean, there was times that I should have used and I didn't. You know what I mean? And she says, you know what? Your pattern doesn't look like other people's pattern of use. It's like you're using based on some type of stress. She says, why don't you go see somebody for that? Why don't you go see a therapist and see maybe you need real help in this way? And I was like, okay. I'm like not really trying to hear that. I'm thinking I'm gonna be gung-ho, I'm gonna do this. I got recovery through AA. I've gotten recovery before through NA. I went to Teen Challenge and I had years sober before. So all of my faculties, every part of my life, my social norms, my living norms, my religious norms, everything worked for me. It did work for me until it didn't. Okay.
Yep.
And what I found out was that none of those things were wrong. I just wasn't hitting all the areas. My mental health was the key of lasting sobriety. So that every area in my life that I address now I have with me, and that is what's keeping me sober. Sober supports, family connectivity, pride in my job and pride in myself. Being humble, understanding what that means and not being humiliated, meaning that I've let life beat me down to the point where I'm not that person I used to be. No, being humble means that I can accept myself for where I am. I can still grow, but I can accept myself for who I am right now. Okay. Allowing people to share with me what they need to share with me, which was a hard thing for me to learn. A lot of it because of my pride from the past, but I learned to overcome that. You know, these are little things I had to do, which counts for years of sobriety today.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. So let me ask you this. How has your life been with relationships as far as boyfriends, girlfriends, mother, father, sister, all that stuff?
Currently fine, but before terrible.
How did your drug use and alcohol use affect it?
It affected it because it kept me away from my family. Every time I would go and I have a binge using, I would leave. I wouldn't stay home. I didn't want them seeing me as a drug addict. See, I still have pride. Okay.
So you just bounced out and
I would leave. I would leave the house. I'll be out of the house for 3 or 4 months using on the streets because I didn't want them seeing me using.
You were living on the streets?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's once again saying that word insanity. Think about it. You chose to literally go homeless you chose to have no home instead of not any drugs.
And actually I was never homeless. I made myself homeless through my drug use. Okay. So, and the reason for that was not because I wanted to use drugs. I didn't want them seeing me using. And see, in my mind, that made sense. So if I felt that if I was going to live that lifestyle, I don't want them to be a part of that lifestyle. That's not what I want them seeing of me. So that, in my mind, was the best way of dealing with it. But of course, that's that is insane thinking, because I could have got more help if I just stayed home, to be honest.
Yep. You would have a support system.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, some of it I was running away from too. By the way, I'm not going to say that I was always good. No, sometimes I really want to use. It wasn't a relapse. I want to use. I wanted to get away from them because I know they would stop me. Okay, I do that. So the best way for me to do it was to leave.
Where you had nobody stopping you.
That's right.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
So it was alcohol and cocaine mostly. Was there any other drugs involved as far as, your poisons of choice?
Just my drug of choice is always alcohol and cocaine. I did marijuana in the beginning, but that was very short-lived. Once alcohol took over, I am a recovering alcoholic, if you want to call it so. The cocaine was episodic. The alcohol was not. Alcohol was
the mainstay.
Yeah, I would use cocaine just so I could stay away from the alcohol, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So
that's one thing I did also. I would consider myself sober. Okay, so I would stop. I remember this, telling my ex-girlfriend, I'm sober now. But what I did was I stopped drinking, but I started snorting Adderall and Klonopin. So I was always doing something, And in my mind, that's how crazy I was. I thought I was sober because, oh, I'm not drinking, so I must be a sober person.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, until that thing that you're using cause you problems too. So,
And it did.
yeah,
It cost me many problems, many nights in jail I landed. I never went to jail for good, but I mean, on separate occasions, I'd be there for a day or so.
okay.
Um,
Good.
so being a clinician, what
Yes.
are some of the most common things you see when you speak to people nowadays? Is there a specific pattern where you can identify it and kind of say, this is what we have to do to fix? I mean, is there anything that you see specifically that you think needs to be worked on more when you actually see patients? Is there anything where you think the psychiatry community is maybe missing? You know?
We have something now today called person-centered treatment. It's something that Martin Seligman, he used to be a president of the APA, American Psychiatric Institute, American Psychiatric Association, APA. Well, he coined what we call person-centered treatment, where we're stopped looking at only the actual diagnosis and treating the diagnosis, but actually treating the whole person. Okay.
Yeah.
He may be with the APA, the American Psychological Association. It's APA, American Psychiatric, or American Psychological, one or the other. But the name Seligman is his name, Martin. So person-centered treatment connects with how a therapist look at a person from the perspective of all your humorous, your living, as far as your social needs, your economic needs, your physical needs, your health and wellness, your spiritual and soulish needs, your mental needs. We're going to look at all those areas and see what areas of your life are not deficient, not doing as best as it could be. Now, if we do it from that point of view, we're looking at the addiction as a substrate of you not doing so well. I'm just putting in that plain language, okay?
Yeah.
If we're looking at the substance abuse as a way for you to treat you not doing so well, the object is, if we treat the areas that you're not doing so well in, would you need the drugs? Will you need the alcohol? So let's label what areas you feel that needs help the most, because this is something that you say you need help with. And myself as a therapist is going to bring around these devices, whether it's CBT, relapse prevention, mindfulness-based relapse prevention, trauma treatment, like I do, and these things to help you settle those areas of your life that's causing you problems and lessen the need to actually use the drugs and alcohol. Okay, if we can do that, then maybe you won't use anymore. That's the mentality for person-centered treatment and drug and alcohol treatment. It's very simple in how I put it, because there's more to it.
It's very simple.
There's more to it. It's way more to it, but I'm just trying to put it as simple as possible. This is basically what we're doing. So the client becomes the one that tells us what they need the most, what worked for them best in the past to stay sober. And then what we're going to do is develop a program with the client, collaboratively together. And we're going to now work that program. I'm going to help you stay accountable to your own programming now, see? And we're going to see if that program that we develop is not so good, maybe we need to change it. We stay collaborative, right? To help the person stay sober.
That's great. That's some good insight. So another question is, being a therapist, speaking to people, is it something where you don't get any triggers? Because I can just imagine the average addict or the average person in recovery, and you just take them and throw them in a room with nothing but stories all day of, the trials and tribulations and everything that people go through. And I'm sure you identify with a lot of stuff. Does it affect you negatively at all? Do you ever go home that night and be like, wow, that guy really hit me with what he said, and it really resonated, and now I don't feel so well?
Yeah, well, it's called self-care, okay? One of and you can research this one of the top professions that have suicide would be one of mine. Psychiatrists, psychologists is on, I think, the top 5, okay? One of the reasons why I believe is because we hold a lot of burdens. That's from other people's sharing with us their burdens, their problems. We need to actually unload that. So we have groups of therapists come together and just unload it. We consistently get counseling, and we get what we call supervision from our supervisors to be able to measure our own ability to handle stress, okay, on a regular. I myself, to become a therapist, I had to get counseled, all right? And it didn't make a difference why I was being counseled, and my school didn't ask me why. It just, I had to do it to fulfill a requirement. Well, I did it as a way of reducing stress. And through that counseling, I learned what we call the tapping solution. That tapping solution today, I use in my trauma treatment for others. All right. So it's important for us to maintain our own sanity, so to speak, and not take home the burdens and the issues of other people. Yes, I've been triggered by my clients when they start talking about stuff, but because I have this, what we call coping skill, and I use it consistently, I show the guys consistently how to use a coping skill: breathing, mindfulness, how to actually ground yourself, which is how you ground yourself to the environment around you, using your ears, your eyes, smells, the feeling of the temperature around the room, how you ground yourself to get rid of the actual energy is coming along with being stressed. Yeah. The more and more you do that, the more and more you can be around people that actually have stress. And when they're sharing their stress with you, if I'm breathing like this and I'm talking to you, I'm getting rid of the stress that you're giving to me. You get me? I'm not holding on to it. So if I hear somebody do something that reminds me of something I did, I'm breathing through it, letting it go. When I'm actually breathing this way, and I'm letting it go, I'm doing one-way breathing in my nose, out my mouth. And what's happening in my brain is that the CO2 has been built up, is being pushed out, and oxygen is getting in there. And I know you know about oxygenation and how it affects your brain and euphoria. So what's happening right now in my mind as I'm doing it is I have a euphoric return, and it's calming me down. So I can hear somebody be really stressful, and I can use these techniques to keep myself calm, and therefore I have to bring that stuff home to my wife. And in the beginning, I was doing that. I was bringing it home to my wife, beating her up with my voice. You don't understand what I'm going through. My wife says, stop doing that. You're causing me stress. And I was like, I got to find a better way of doing this because I can't keep stressing her out. So,
yeah, I need another outlet. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, getting towards the end here, is there anything that you want our listeners to know? Is there anything you think would be helpful guiding them? We have a lot of addicts that they're listening to this because, they're looking for some information. And, obviously someone like yourself is a great resource for us.
First of all, I want to say don't quit. Okay. And you have to have people around you that understand you, love you enough to not let you quit. The reason why I say that is this: for a lot of people in addiction, when they get to the end of their rope, a lot of us choose suicide as an option. It just comes up in my mind. I just can't stand living. I'm not supposed to be living this way. That was never how I viewed myself living. I haven't been able to, I'm sorry about that. I haven't been able to attain all my goals that I wanted, or I actually obtained the goals and I lost everything, so suicide becomes an option, a strong option. And for me, it became a strong option 3 times. The last time was over 11 years ago. Okay.
If you don't mind me asking, what drove you to that? Was there anything specific?
Mental health, my mental health, stress, and my feeling of not actually being the person I knew I could be. That was enough.
Like, so you felt like a failure? You felt like you were failing?
Of course. I've gained and lost, gaining and lost. That's a hurtful position for anybody. And I mean, when I'm talking about years sobriety, I mean like gaining houses, gaining apartments, gaining cars, and losing it all. Okay, so I'm not just talking about getting sober and living in somebody else's house. I'm talking about getting sober and rebuilding a life, then losing it because of relapse. That weighs heavy on people and weighs heavy on your family. However, if you have the mentality of not quitting, even when you feel, at least in the mindset tells you, why don't you stop? Inside, deeply inside, you know that you are built for so much more. There's something great inside of you, okay, that needs to come out. And I had people tell me this stuff, reminding me of the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be sharing with the world. And because of that, it gave me strength to stop using and look at myself differently. My self-esteem rose because of that. I got back to the person I used to be, even gotten past that person. I was going to become a doctor, a medical doctor, and I could still become that. Even at 55 years old, I could go back to med school if I wanted to. But today I choose to finish off my clinical psychology degree because I want to improve people's lives in a way that my life was improved. One of the most significant things that happened to me in being treated. When I was treated over 11 years ago, I was in the military. And I had to go to treatment because of relapsing. Well, actually using when I was in the military. I was sober. So when I went to that treatment, I had two ladies that were my therapists. Neither one of them were addicts. Neither one of them. Okay. And another block, if you're not an addict, then how would you know about an addict, right? That's a barrier that a lot of us put up with therapists, right?
Yep. So
I refused to even entertain that. I said, I'm here. I know I messed up. I just need to know why, right? And that's the mindset I had. And she said, listen, you know what? I'm not going to treat you like I treat the other ones that come in here. You know too much about recovery. What I'm going to do is put you on a path of self-exploration. I'm going to give you things that you can examine yourself and see where you messed up at. And that was the best thing that could ever happen. When I did that, and she kept me accountable because she kept me the whole 30 days. And I didn't want to be there because I wanted to get back to my unit. She said, why are you rushing so fast? Give yourself a break, right? I'm like, oh, please, I want to leave, right? I mean, so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll whatever. So I did it. Well, after that, I went to 2 other therapists, okay? That was 2 then. 2 other therapists I had after that, one mental health, one substance abuse, had them both for 9 months straight. So now I'm a whole year in treatment, okay? And I'm like, oh God, okay. So I had to go through a whole year of treatment, going back and forth to help my mental health and my substance abuse. But that was the best thing that ever happened to me because both sides of the coin was treated. Nothing was missing. I didn't look at myself as deficient. I spent 14 years in the military, came out as a decorated sergeant because of it. So what I'm saying about don't give up, I'm saying don't give up. There's a purpose you have in life. People be there to help you with your purpose. Just like me, I started my path to become a doctor in psychology over 10 years ago. I'm finishing now.
It's possible.
It's possible. You can do it.
That's one thing that's great that you say that. I think when we're in addiction for some reason, it's very hard for an addict, and I know it was at least for myself, to envision the future. You had no long-term goals because it just felt like, what's the point of making them? Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying that just focus on not giving up. Don't worry about the goals. It'll happen. But the moment that you feel like you're at your very bitter end, just don't give up. Get back to the people that love you, care about you. They don't want to hurt you. They want the best for you. They may be arguing and maybe screaming. It's because they love you. They want the best for you. That's why they're doing it. And as you start to get rid of the hurt ears, right? Get rid of the hurt ears for a little bit and listen to what they're saying. They love you and they want the best for you. And once I understood that, then I was able to stay sober for the years I have now. And I can't see myself actually falling back, and I just can't see that. It's great. Is there anything else you think that I missed, didn't touch on, that you want to let the listeners know about? Yeah, you know what? I'm doing a doctoral project. Can I promote this now? Promote everything you got going on. Okay, so I'm doing a doctoral project. Kyle L. Dudley is my name on Facebook, and if you're a part of any one of the recovery groups, you'll see one of my ads. It's like a little ad for participants of those that have been treated or not treated for alcoholism. I'm looking for people that have actually been able to get sober and tell me their story, just like what you did with me today. Okay. Yeah. But I'll have structured questions to answer certain specific clinical things that I think everybody needs to know about why we stay sober. I'm an advocate for those that are in recovery. I want the voice of those in recovery to affect the clinical realm, not the opposite way. The addict that actually stays sober should be able to share back with the clinicians how they stay sober, so that way they can build up their understanding of how people stay sober. And I think that we're not doing enough of it. That's the reason why I'm doing my project. So will you put a link to my Facebook on the page when you actually put it up? Or? Yeah, I'll put it on my Facebook page. I'll put it on the Facebook group. Okay. Yeah, I'll help you promote that. Absolutely. Yeah, and I also have some other groups. We have Add-a-Non, which is for the families, and Add-a-Teen. So I don't know if you ever want to do some research there, you let me know. Yeah, because I want to start. I'm starting with us, but I definitely want to connect with those people that are supporting what was best for them in support of us that are staying sober, because that's important too. I'm a family advocate.
I want people that are trying to stay sober to understand your family doesn't hate you. They don't like what you're doing. That's all. They don't hate you though.
They
And
hate the
that's
drug.
important to understand. And I
Yeah.
work with families to teach them how to best support their family members that are addicts and also support themselves. You know, codependency is a big deal. So,
And that's great. I mean, we have to thank you very much for your hard work. You know, at the end of the day, anyone in my mind that does as much as you've done and is trying and will continue on trying, it's a great thing.
thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on. So if you guys like us, lower right hand, there's a little logo on this video. Just click on that and click subscribe. Also give us a like. Then go on our, as I mentioned to Kyle, our Facebook group and our Facebook page is just Addicts Anonymous. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. This video will also be on YouTube, where once again, our name is just Addicts Anonymous. And the last thing is check out Addicts-Anonymous. It's a website we just got redone. There's plenty of resources there, all types of things, whether it's for mental health, addiction. And that's all we got for today. So I want to say until next time, folks, we'll see you then.